pointed out, a lot of quick and parallel developments there taking place. The big news coming in is, and this is what we're picking as main sources, that Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, will in fact resign. He will go, realizing that the numbers are not in his favor. Zaka continues to be with us. So Zaka, if you heard that conversation with Sushant, he's actually giving you a live bet where he feels in terms of the vote, not very sure whether Imran Khan will have the numbers or not. But jokes apart, I want to understand, where do you see all of this headed now? What do you see as the future as far as politics of Pakistan is concerned?
Make that announcement in the address to the nation later tonight, then it means that most likely Shahbaz Sharif, who is the former Chief Minister of Punjab and also the brother of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, he'll most likely be the next Prime Minister. But then this government will not have more than a year to be in office. In fact, less than a year to be in office. Essentially, this will be a sort of a transition government from this government to the next. So the major role of this government would be to prepare the way for elections. And yes, different political parties have had different reservations when it comes to elections. But I think it's also worthwhile talking about, where it went wrong for Imran Khan from being called the army's man. And Sushant is right. I mean, the 2018 election was actually managed by the army because Imran Khan's party, if I'm not mistaken, had about 155, 160 seats. The rest were all put together by the smaller parties. And it's those smaller parties who started turning against him over the last few weeks and months. And I'm given to understand that it is at the behest of the army. Basically, General Bajwa, who's the Chief of Army Staff, and Imran Khan, who's the Prime Minister, just could not see eye to eye. They are not on the same page when it comes to not just security issues, but also political issues. The army has a very unfavorable view of how the Pakistan government has handled not just the economic crisis, but also COVID management. These were all things that Imran Khan had promised that he would do differently from the last two parties, the PPP and the PMLN. And unfortunately, he too turned out to be cut of the same cloth, if you were to look at it from an average Pakistani's point of view. So I think ultimately the rupture that happened between the Chief of Army Staff and the Prime Minister, and the fact that they were not on the same page, even on issues like CPEC, for example, Imran Khan was not on the same page with General Bajwa. Chinese investments in the country, even the relations with India. Given the actions that we've seen from General Bajwa, whether it was the role he played in the opening up of Kartarpur, whether it was the white paper that the army came out with yesterday, and people who have met him and interacted with him do say that he believes that the way forward for Pakistan, and this was borne out in the white paper as well, is to have improved relations on the western flank, is to have improved relations with India. Imran Khan was clearly not in a position to have those improved relations with India. He clearly did not get on the right foot with Prime Minister Modi. There was name calling. He didn't quite understand what happened on the 5th of August 2019 when Article 370 was abrogated. So clearly this was a man who just couldn't come to terms with the most important bilateral relationships as well. Forget about what he did or did not do domestically. The relationship with America is in absolute doldrums. Can you imagine? Joe Biden has been president for the last year plus now, and there's not even been a phone call between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So major bilateral relationships, even the Gulf countries, even with Saudi Arabia, which at one point used to be Pakistan's biggest benefactor, Imran Khan has a very, very frayed relationship both with Riyadh as well as with Abu Dhabi. So I think all of these factors put together, the domestic reasons primary, of course, no doubt about it, but also the bilateral relations that have frayed over the last few years, all of this put together, I think the army finally said it's time to pull the plug. And once that signaling came in from GHQ, all the smaller parties, members of his own party, started falling in line, and that's how Imran Khan sort of lost the numbers game, as it were.
Zaka, I quickly want to understand before I go across to my guest, because you were talking about bilateral relations, how do you see this move as far as India is concerned? Because things have changed drastically over the last couple of years as far as India's own relationship with the United States, relations between Joe Biden and the Prime Minister here, and of course Pakistan's growing proximity with China. How do you see this move impacting bilateral relations now?
See, for now, I think India will just play it easy. They will allow the political process in Pakistan to play itself out. So if that means that Imran is going going to resign and Shahbaz Sharif becomes the next Prime Minister. Let's be very clear, the next government will only have a very brief time in office. Their fundamental job would be to prepare the country for the next round of elections and ensure that it's a free and fair poll. So I don't think India would make any big ticket moves. But having said that, we have seen in the past, a fair bit of entente between India and Pakistan when Nawaz Sharif was Prime Minister. Even when Mr. Modi got elected in 2014, you famously remember in 2015 how he flew into Lahore
Correct.
to attend the wedding ceremony of Nawaz Sharif's granddaughter. So I think that hope is always there, but I don't see that happening in the immediate future, not
Sure.
least because, like I said, the next government in Pakistan, its only job and its singular job will be to prepare the country for elections. But I think more than India, I think Pakistan also needs a reset sort of moment with the United States. This entire, conspiracy letter that Imran Khan keeps talking about was purportedly written by the former Pakistan ambassador in Washington, and it was sent to the foreign ministry. I'm given to understand, even though the contents of that letter have not been made public, it's some grand conspiracy that the American state is making to overthrow Imran Khan. Now, this is a part fanciful, part fiction, but it also reveals just how the depths to which the relationship between Washington and Islamabad has sunk to.
Yeah.
I mean, here is a Prime Minister of Pakistan who is openly advocating for the Taliban, even when Joe Biden was asking the US troops to pull back and leave the country. It was almost like Imran Khan was cherishing that moment.
Yeah.
I think he made a famous speech a few days after the Taliban took over Kabul, and where he said, this is reprisal for what has happened over centuries. He was actually endorsing Taliban rule. So I think it doesn't speak well of the Prime Minister of a large country like Pakistan to be
Sure.
speaking almost like an extremist. But like I said, the domestic reasons, the handling of the economy, the frayed tensions with the army, and then of course his lack of political management, I think that's what is costing him his job.
Okay, Zaka, we leave the conversation there. I'll just request my guests who've been patiently waiting to just wait for another minute. We just want to play out some reactions and we'll begin the conversation with them.
बाहर के लोगों को आदत नहीं है कि पाकिस्तान में ऐसी लीडरशिप हो जो अपने मुल्क के मफादात को आगे रखे। इंडिपेंडेंट फॉरेन पॉलिसी का मतलब होता है एक फॉरेन पॉलिसी जो अपने मुल्क की इंटरेस्ट को आगे रखती है। तो ये जो साजिश है ये इंशाल्लाह मैंने मेंशन किया कि मेरे पास डॉक्यूमेंट है, वो आज डॉक्यूमेंट मैं सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट को अब दिखाऊंगा। लोग समझते हैं ना जी कि कोई ड्रामा हो रहा है, ये ड्रामा नहीं हो रहा। हम सिर्फ ये देख रहे थे कि हम अपने मुल्क के इंटरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट करना चाहते हैं, इसलिए हम वो पूरी तरह लोगों को बता नहीं सकते।
Let me introduce our guest joining us on this broadcast. We have former diplomat Manju Seth and we also have senior journalist Umar Altaf. Good evening to both of you. Umar, let me begin with you first because a lot of quick and parallel developments now taking place. From Sunday to now, some were saying that probably there'll be a trump card as far as Imran Khan is concerned. Something will drastically change and he'll have the numbers in his favor. But since morning we'd been reporting it's looking very, very unlikely. Now we're reporting as means of our sources that it's all over for Imran Khan and he in fact will resign. How